This is Ask Todd on the Financial Exchange Radio Network. If you have an existing estate plan or are in the market for one, Todd Lutsky is here to answer your questions and help you plan for later life. Ask Todd is presented by Cushing & Dolan, serving Massachusetts and New England for more than 35 years, helping families with estate and tax planning, Medicaid planning, and probate law. Visit CushingDolan.com. Now, here's Todd Lutsky.
And we are joined now by Todd Lutsky from the law firm of Cushing & Dolan for Ask Todd. It's your chance to ask Todd your questions about your estate plans. So, if you've got a question for Todd about estate planning, the studio number here is 888-205-2263. That's the number to call to ask Todd your question right here on the air. Again, that number is 888-205-2263. Last week, I know we left at least one person hanging and couldn't get to their question. So if you do have one, get calling early to get in line. Again, it's 888-205-2263. Mr. Lutsky, how are you today?
I am never better. How are you?
Doing well. Do you know that I used to be in a band called the Dead Squirrels?
No, I didn't know you even played music.
I did. We played a lot of middle-of-the-road stuff.
Of course you did.
Yeah. Not in it anymore, obviously. Let's talk a little bit about life estates. Can you put a life estate on multiple properties?
You know, folks, there's no real limit to doing it, but the answer is you probably should not.
How come?
Put a life estate on multiple properties, because the main reason people do life estates is to try to protect it from the nursing home. They think it's a quick fix to protect assets from the nursing home. And it would accomplish that. I mean, ultimately, after 5 years, it would be protected from the cost of long-term care. Again, pros and cons. But when you do it, you keep this thing called a life estate. This thing is a property right, and it's your right to live there, and it's your right to the income, and, of course, you get to pay the bills. That's what you get. And the remainder piece is what you give to the children, or you give to an irrevocable trust when you create the life estate. That's the two ways to do it. Well, you do that because when you get sick and go in a nursing home more than 5 years after you do this, then that piece that's a life estate in your primary residence is an asset because you still own it. But since it's your primary residence, it's non-countable for Medicaid eligibility purposes. Beautiful. That's why we do it. Let's flip that to your question, Chuck. What if I had a rental property and I took it and gave it to the kids, or put it in a trust and reserved the life estate?
Or even a second home that I use for the summer or the winter or something like that.
Yeah, correct. Or a vacation home, and I just throw it into the kid's name, and I keep a right to live there. Well, now if I get sick 5 years later, I have a right to live, a property right in my name in another piece of property that is not my primary residence. So therefore, the value of that right, that property right, is going to cause me to be ineligible for Medicaid because it's just an asset that is not the primary residence. Remember, it's the primary residence that provides that added level of protection.
So if someone were concerned about protecting assets from the cost of long-term care, is there a reason why they would or should choose a life estate over an irrevocable Medicaid trust?
Yeah, one of the reasons I would do, and it's not over, by the way, not in
conjunction?
in lieu of. Yeah, I would do it in conjunction with, is I would keep a life estate. One of the reasons I would keep a life estate for people is I would have them put the remainder interest never in the hands of the kids, but in the hands or the entity of the trust. That's fine. And if they keep a life interest, let's say it is a rental property, Chuck, that way the rent can come directly to them and not flow through the trust. So for convenience, that's nice. I don't have to flow anything through the trust if I have a life estate.
Okay.
So I might keep a life estate in that, but only if it's a two-family. It can't just be a separate rental. If it's a separate rental, again, I blow the problem with that. Right?
Gotcha.
If it's a two-family, I'm living in the upstairs and I'm renting the downstairs, now I can keep a life estate. But if it's just a pure rental, I would not do that.
What if it's just a primary residence, no rental income or anything like that?
I'd probably only keep a life estate if I had an outstanding mortgage. Sometimes people that are doing Medicaid planning still have a mortgage. I would reserve the life estate so as not to trigger the due on sale clause on the mortgage. That would be the only time I would do it. Otherwise, I'd put the whole house in the EREV trust.
We're speaking with Todd Lutsky from the law firm of Cushing & Dolan. If you have a question for Todd about your estate plan, this is the time to call so you can speak with him about your specific estate plan. That number here is 888-205-2263. That's our studio line here. Again, it's 888-205-2263. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, it's right to your calls.
Ask Todd with Todd Lutsky every Wednesday at 10:30, only here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
All right, as promised, we're going right to your calls. If you do want to speak with Todd Lutsky right now, call 888-205-2263. Let's go first to Robert in Malden. You're on with Todd Lutsky.
Hi, Todd. Good morning, and good morning, Chuck, and all at the show. Todd, I have a question for you. I have a annuity, which is an IRA annuity. There's about almost $500,000 in there. And I was wondering, is it possible to put that annuity in a trust to protect it from a nursing home cost or anything like that?
Yeah, so unfortunately, it's not the fact so much that it's in an annuity. It's that you said it's an IRA annuity. So
yes,
if it's inside an IRA, folks, anytime you have an IRA, what it's invested in isn't important. The important part is that it's an IRA. And IRAs cannot go into irrevocable trusts or revocable trusts for that matter while you're living, because in order for it to happen, you would have to take the money out of the IRA, and that, of course, is a big taxable event. So we don't want to incur a huge $500,000 worth of income in 1 year by taking the money out and putting it into the irrevocable trust, because I'm going to lose 30 or 40% probably between federal and state. So unfortunately, Robert, the answer is no. You can't do it in advance. It is possible to, if you're married and you set up irrevocable testamentary trusts, it is possible that if you don't go into a nursing home but end up passing away and you're over 73 years of age, the estate can be named the beneficiary, and then it can be protected in advance if the spouse was to get sick. A little more complicated, I know, than maybe you were calling for, and it's tough on the radio, but that's the quick answer to your question. So, folks, just wanted to give you a shout out on life estates, because we were talking about that earlier. And life estates are something that everybody uses. You hear them all the time. They're thrown around, as the simplest way to protect assets from the nursing home. Remember, simple isn't always better. So in this case, learn about life estates, learn how they work, understand that you may or may not be able to sell it the way you thought. It's exposed to children's creditors. You may not have the income tax benefits you think you're getting. So learn about the pros and cons, and maybe you might want to learn about how to undo one if you're already in one. Calculating the consequences of a life estate is the guide we're giving away this month. 866-848-5699 or legalexchangeshow.com. You can download it right there. Again, 866-848-5699 or legalexchangeshow.com.
Again, sticking with your calls here, let's go to Steve in New Hampshire. You are on with Todd Lutsky.
Good morning, Mr. Lutsky. I have a question concerning a SEP IRA account.
Okay.
The value is approximately about $2 million. I'm my age now. I'm at 65, and I'm concerned about the required minimum distribution. So at this point, I believe it's 73 that I would have to start drawing off the account.
That is correct.
So to switch over to a Roth, I think that to bring down the number, I'm going to get hit pretty heavy on the tax on that conversion at this point.
Correct.
So am I better off trying to take money out of the account and drawing down those funds, not take Social Security next year at 66 and a half, and just trying to reduce that amount from the $2 million and just actually putting it into a brokerage account, just take, and get hit with the income that'll come off
So
of the step.
the question is, do you want to convert to a Roth? Are you asking, basically?
Well, I think that if I convert to a Roth, I think that I can't convert enough of it, in my mind, to make sense.
Well, let me help you with your question is, what do you do with the IRA? What do you do with? So what is your question then? What do I do with the IRA? Do I take money out or?
Yes, my question is, does it make sense to take, let's just say, $50,000 a year for the next 6 years or so, trying to reduce what's in the IRA, pay the tax on that as income?
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
How many? Do you have children?
Yes.
How many children?
Two children.
And are they doing okay in life?
They are.
Okay, great. So here's the issue, right? I'm going to just, in the time I have left, I'll give you what I think is an answer to your question. So, folks, when you have a $2.0 million IRA, right, it's a large number, right? If we don't spend that during our life, which is my advice to clients when we're doing estate planning, right? Take that and spend it during life first before I spend all my other money, right? Because that money, if I try not to spend it, right, then I end up leaving $2 million to my children. Well, my children under the Secure Act have to take it out over 10 years. Well, with $2 million, right, a million each, let's say, they're going to be taking out well over $100,000 a year because they have to take it out over 10 years. So they're going to be bumped into a higher bracket, especially if they're earning money in their own right. So it's ultimately going to be income taxed higher than perhaps it'll be taxed when you take it out if you work to leave it to your children. So I don't love that approach. The flip side is, as Steve is saying, well, I don't want to take it all out now because I'm going to have a 40% haircut. Correct. But look at your brackets every year. Steve, you know where you are in your income tax world. You know what kind of income you're making. And this is for everybody. Like, look at where you are in your income tax bracket world and see how much you can take out before you go to the next bracket, right? You might find that you can take out 50, 60, 70, maybe even more per year and not bump yourself into the next higher bracket. Well, if that's the case, yes, I recommend taking it out. I recommend spending some of it if you can spend it. And to the extent you don't spend it, you have choices of either investing it directly into a brokerage account. And again, if you want to do planning and you're talking about nursing homes and the like, putting it into an irrevocable trust might be okay. Or converting it to a Roth and letting it grow, income tax free in that Roth. So it's a function of how much you take out and how slowly you take it out. You can manage your income tax hit and then spend other money first. But again, I think there's a lot more involved here for someone like Steve or anyone that's got a $2 million IRA. I suspect there's a lot of other money that's probably, or not money, but other assets that Steve might have. So you want to look into an entire estate plan, folks, not just one asset, and see what you can do for all the other assets as well in conjunction with an IRA. But, Chuck, overall, the IRAs are one of the more complicated assets to deal with. I like to tell people that an IRA is that square peg that you try to fit in the round estate planning hole, and it doesn't really always fit. So tough asset to deal with, but good question, Steve.
Todd Lutsky, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
The views expressed in this segment are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Armstrong Advisory does not provide any legal or tax advice. Please consult with your legal or tax advisor on such matters. Cushing & Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. This has been Ask Todd on the Financial Exchange Radio Network. Ask Todd with Todd Lutsky has been presented by Cushing & Dolan, serving Massachusetts and New England for more than 30 years, helping families with estate and tax planning, Medicaid planning, and probate law. Call 800-393-4001 or visit CushingDolan.com. Building the proper estate plan not only protects your assets from the nursing home, but also helps you avoid probate and potentially eliminates estate taxes. However, if you choose to use a life estate, you need to be aware of the many problems it can cause. Life estates are complicated. They could create significant issues such as losing control of your estate. So, call Cushing & Dolan today at 866-848-5699 and get their new guide called Calculating the Consequences of Life Estates. In it, you'll learn about strategies you can use to make sure that you create the right document for your estate plan. Call right now, 866-848-5699, and request your free guide called Calculating the Consequences of Life Estates. That's 866-848-5699. Or you can request the guide online from their website, LegalExchangeShow.com. That's LegalExchangeShow.com.